What's up everybody? Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to get a perfect layout for your shower pan every single time. I've been using this method for a while now. It makes it so much easier for tile install. So what we're going to do is we're going to be building a template. And what I like to do is I like to use my scrap GoBoard. I just saved the long strips from job to job. I rip them down in my table saw to 1.5 inches. If you don't have extra material like this, it's not a problem. You could just get yourself a sheet of Lulon or something like that, make those rips, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get a hot glue gun and we're going to hot glue our template around the perimeter of the pan, and we're going to go ahead and set our tile drain in place, the grate for the tile drain, and we'll also make a template for that. So I'll show you guys how I build my template. And the best thing about these templates is what you're going to do is you're going to lay out all your tile for your pan on the floor, make sure all your grout joints are even, and you just set the template on top of that, scribe everything all in one shot, and then make all your cuts, which is fantastic to have all your cuts ready. You can go ahead and mud your entire shower pan at one time, set all your tile in one sweep. You don't have to worry about your thin set drying or getting curded up where it won't adhere to your tile. I'll show you guys the trowel that I use and the method I use to get the tile down with good adhesion also. So I hope you enjoy the video, hope you learned something. I'm gonna show you guys a great trick that'll make your shower pan install so much easier. Okay guys, let's go ahead and start this prep. So if you've been following along the process, I had the demo, I had the prep on the GoBoard, and the only thing I didn't include was the Hydro Band for the waterproofing. So there's 4 coats of Hydro Band that I did. I did 3 coats yesterday when I did the floor tile. I also didn't share the floor tile because I already have an instructional video on how to set floor tile. So if you go back in my videos and you're curious on how to set the floor tile, I do have a video up for that as well. But today we're just going to be focusing on templating and setting the tile in the pan. And what we've done here is we used a bonding flange from Schluter. So this is a hybrid system. I like to use the bonding flange because I like to do my mud bed instead of the foam pans. But even if you have a foam pan, it's going to be the same process from here on out as far as templating and setting your tile. So what I like to do is I've got an oil rub bronze finish here, and you've got like a little plastic piece that'll just clip into that, just like so. And then you've also got this little piece that will be thin setted when you set your tile. So we're going to just snap this thing together and get it about the height that we think our tile is going to be sitting, and just set it in the hole. And what I'd recommend doing here is you're going to want a framing square or some kind of square to square up your drain. You don't want it off kilter a little bit. You want to make sure it's perfectly square when you make your template. And another thing I like to do is I like to make sure it's centered in the hole, because Schluter, if you look, it actually has maybe 3/8 or so of play front, back, side, side. So if when you do your template, your tile shifts just a little bit, you do have the luxury of shifting the drain around also so that you can get it perfectly to fit inside of your cut. So the template's a good way to go for this. I'm gonna get a framing square, square this thing up, and then all we gotta do is we're gonna start hot gluing our perimeter, and then we'll hot glue our center pieces in to get the exact location of the drain. And we'll set out our tile outside on the driveway, get everything lined up perfectly, scribe it, and start making some cuts. So let's go ahead and start building this template. So here's my framing square. We're not going to get to this point yet, but this is what I'm talking about. You can go off of your curb, or you can just go off of the back. I eyed that actually about perfect, but good to double check. I'll double check off the back wall too when I go ahead and start gluing my template up, and I'll likely keep the framing square in there as I'm gluing just to make sure that it is exactly where I want it to be glued, because once I make my template, I'm going to commit to cutting all my tile, and I want to make sure that's perfect. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're just going to outline the perimeter with the GoBoard. And what's great about the GoBoard is I can just cut it right in place with a knife. And what you want to do is you want to cut it about 1/4 inch shorter total than the entire width. I'm just going off of the wall here. See how we did? And that's going to be our first piece of the form. So we're just going to cut the entire perimeter in, put them all in place. And what I like to do is I do the long pieces, and then I'll actually set the short pieces inside and glue over top of that, because I want to be able to scribe with my pencil. I don't want to build it up. I'll show you what I mean. Now this is what I'm talking about right here. You want to cut this so that it sits inside of the template. And it can be a little short because you're going to glue a piece over top of it. It's nice to have just a little bit of play. Let's get the the other side out. Oh, this might be big enough. Let's see. It is. And then we'll just glue that little piece on the inside corner just like that. So it's not overly complicated. I've got my hot glue gun heating up right now. So let me just let that finish heating up. I'm gonna make a couple more cuts and then we'll start gluing this entire template together. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut into place. I am gonna need a couple little pieces, so I'm gonna cut a few more of those right now. I like saving this scrap. I save it from job to job because it comes in handy. You don't have to buy any extra materials. Make sure that your drain is perfectly square. Looks like I could shift this just a hair. And it's good to leave like a 1/16 inch of play in your template when you're building it, so that you don't get your tile cut so tight that it won't let the tile fit in at the end. You can see just a couple little dabs of some hot glue. We'll go ahead and press that right in place. That's it, guys. Very simple. People say that I've had people online tell me this is a waste of time. I cut as I go. I guarantee I can get it done just as quick. They might get it done just as quick, but I don't think it's as easy and I don't think it's as effective. This is definitely the way to go. I've had a lot of luck doing it this way. And I like cutting all my tile at once. It's such a benefit. But I'd say the biggest benefit of doing it this way is that you can lay your template on your tile and make sure that you don't end up with a small piece anywhere. It gives you the luxury of knowing exactly where your tile is going to finish when you make your cuts, which is a huge advantage when you're cutting around a tile drain, because sometimes if you're just piecing it in, you're taking a little bit of a gamble as to where your sheets are gonna end and what kind of piece you're gonna end up with. And it takes, 10 minutes to build a template, so why not? But now I just got to glue the perimeter in. This will be entirely finished. And then we're going to let it dry for a minute. We'll pull it all out and we'll go trace it right onto some tile outside. One more thing before we go. What I do for my tile drain is I don't glue pieces right here. All I'll do is I'll mark it with a Sharpie on either side exactly where the drain is. And I can just go ahead and scribe it onto the tile when I get it out there with the drain itself. So I'll just mark it with a pencil. We'll take it out. And I'll show you guys laying it out on the tile and getting your perfect cut every single time. Okay, I've just cleared an area in the garage, and now all we have to do is get our material for our shower pan, and we're just gonna lay it out exactly how it goes in the pan. And just like the best piece of advice I could give you when you're doing this is make sure that when you're laying this out, that as you put your sheets together, you get your grout line perfect when you're putting them together. Because if you push them all together tight, it might throw it off just a little bit. So you want to lay this exactly how it's going to lay in the pan, and make sure that the grout lines are perfect before we put our template on it. I've just got my template drying right now in place while I'm doing this. Honestly, the hot glue dries pretty quickly, but a little extra time to let it dry before we pull it out, just to make sure that it doesn't fall apart when we pull it out. Let's go ahead and lay out all this tile. Now I may have to go one row wider. I'll double check in a minute. I'm gonna go ahead and grab that template and lay it on here and see how close we are. I think I have to go one more wider though. And just note, before I pulled this out, I marked the front so I knew which end would be the front and the back of my shower template. And I sure enough have to go one row higher and one row lower to get this on the template. So I'll just set this aside, lay out one more row of tile, and we're gonna go ahead and start tracing everything in place. I've got my template down at this point, and what I'm gonna do is, having this tile laid out is so beneficial because you can also use the tile to help square up your template to make sure that the tile is perfectly cut square around the perimeter and around the drain. So I've already moved it around a little bit, but I just recommend moving it around. First, I focus on my drain and I look where my drain cuts are gonna be, and I make sure I'm not gonna end up with any little tiny pieces. Once I've got that kind of in an area that I think it'll work well, I'll look at my perimeter. You can just eye the tile and you can see if it's sitting square with your template or not. Keep in mind your shower might be a little out of square depending on your prep, but it gives you a pretty good idea, and you got a little bit of play around the perimeter too. So I'll just use some painter's tape, and I will tape it when I've got it exactly where I want it. I'm gonna scribe the outside with a Sharpie. I'm gonna do the same thing on the inside also. I wouldn't recommend using a Sharpie if you're using a porous tile like a natural stone, because it'll suck in. Just use a pencil. But this is a ceramic, and it's got like a little bit of a glossy finish, so I could wipe it right off. And also on the perimeter, I'm gonna cut the line, so I would recommend that with you guys as well. When you make your line, it might grow a little bit, so keep that in mind. I cut on the inside of the line. You've got room with your wall tile. Your wall tile is 3/8 inch without any thin set behind it. So you can cut that line, and you know that you're gonna still have enough tile that it'll be underneath your wall tile. So I'm gonna take that line, and then I'm just gonna go grab the drain, set the drain in the center, and make sure that that's marked out perfectly, because I only marked that with a Sharpie for placement. I'll set that drain down on there and just scribe it really quick and make sure that that's gonna be a perfect cut also. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape this up, get everything marked out, and then I'll go ahead and cut all the sheets, and we'll install the shower pan. I've got everything in place. I've got it taped down, and I also went ahead and I threw some tape on top of my grate just to protect the grate, not only from sliding on this and possibly scratching the finish, but we're about to install this in the shower. So we don't want any thin set getting in there. We don't want any grout getting in there. I just threw some blue painter's tape on there, and then I scored it around the perimeter with a razor blade and got myself a nice clean little cut. And this is the last thing we have to do, is just mark our template now. And like I said, I like to just set that right in place. And I'm eyeing the marks that I made when I was in the bathroom. I told you guys I marked this for the grate instead of putting anything down. Just gonna put our hand on that and just make a line with the Sharpie. Same thing right here. And it really is that simple, guys. Now cutting it could be a little more complicated. You gotta be careful making your cuts. Cutting these sheets could be a little difficult. I like to put a little piece of, I'm using a wet saw, and I like to put a little rip of tile in the middle, and that will keep the tile from pushing in between the little gap right there. So just fill in that gap with something if you can. I'm gonna scribe the rest of this tile, and then we're just gonna cut it one piece at a time, and we'll cut the entire thing in one go, set it all right back in place, and then we'll get all our thin set on the pan and just grab one at a time and just feed it right into the shower pan. It's gonna be a much quicker and easier process than having to cut as we go. And I was able to get a beautiful layout on the drain. I didn't end up with any little tiny cuts. Everything looks really nice. I'm happy with that. So let's go ahead and get this thing moving on and get our shower pan installed. All of our tiles are cut. I've got them all laid out outside. Just make sure if you're using a wet saw, you dry everything off before you try to attach it to your pan. A little bit of moisture on the bottom of those sheets might make it so you don't have good adhesion on your tile from your thin set. So keep that in mind. I dried all mine off with a rag and then laid them on a towel. Everything's laid out in order. So all I gotta do is spread some thin set out on my pan, and then we're gonna go ahead and start setting some tiles. And a couple techniques I'm gonna share with you guys. If you're using like a 16th or an 1/8 inch V-notch, it's not gonna be enough. You're not gonna get good adhesion. It might stick, but if you start peeling the sheets up, you'll notice on the back of your sheets, you're not getting good adhesion. So a nice little trick is called flat backing. I've got a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch trowel. We're gonna trowel out our lines, and then with the flat edge of the trowel, we're gonna knock the ridges down. That'll leave us a little bit more thin set underneath the mosaics. It's a protocol that a lot of glass sheets call for, but we're gonna go ahead and do it on this. I think it's good for all mosaics. So we're gonna put our lines, knock it down, do some flat backing, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna set our sheets in one by one. But before we start setting our sheets, I'll likely just build up some thin set around the drain, set the drain by eye, roughly in place, but by the time we get it to our tile up to the drain, we're gonna know exactly where it needs to be. It'll still be wet, so it'll be very easy to maneuver it and make sure that it hits perfectly. And I would just recommend, if you haven't done so already and you're doing this, just put your drain inside of the cut you just made and make sure it's gonna work by the time you get in here. You don't wanna lay out all your tile and then find out that your drain was just a little bit off. I also took a little polishing pad and I polished the corners if there was any little bit of rough edges from my cuts to make sure that it looked as good as possible, because that is gonna be a part of your shower that you're gonna see every single time you step in. So a good drain cut is gonna look a lot better than if there's some bad jagged edges or you didn't hit your drain properly. So be very careful with that. You want to make sure that's one of the best cuts in the shower. The rest of them, they're going to be covered up. But this one, you're going to see, so keep it in mind. Let's start off by mounting our drain. I'm just going to get a good buildup. Make sure you don't get anything in there. I took my forms out, or I took my drain plug out at this point. So just be careful. You don't want to get any thin set in there. Just carefully line the edge. And that has like a little bit of a recessed feel to it. So I'm just trying to flush it up at this point with the rest of the pan. They do that intentionally so that when you set the grate in, it sits below. And also, don't push your drain all the way down. Leave yourself room. I have over an inch. I know I got plenty to set this. We will set this down flush with the tile once the tile's in there. And then what I like to do is just go ahead, clean it up a little bit, and get you a nice little coat around it. Now let's get some tile on the pan. And like I said, we're going to line everything out with the 1/4 inch. And then when I'm talking about flat backing, this is all we're going to do. We're going to knock those lines down flush, lightly. You still want the buildup, and that will give you a lot more adhesion on the bottom of your sheets than you're going to get with one of those little V-notch trowels. And I know they can be attractive to use because if you've done tile before, you know that if you use too large of a trowel, you'll run into issues with all of the thin set coming up through your sheets. But with flat backing, you are flattening out all that, and you're not going to have to worry about that. And you're still going to make sure that you have the right amount of thin set on your pan. So let's just start with the first few sheets. I like to do it like I'm reading a book. Start in the back, left corner, and I'm just going to work my way down. So we've got some thin set in. Now we're going to flat back it. And again, I'm not applying any pressure. I'm just letting the weight of the trowel kind of knock those lines down. We're just going to start on the corner. And I'm going to work my way all the way to the front first because I want to make sure that my cuts are right before I commit to the entire pan. And we're good. Everything fit in. Now, I am going to pack that down with the grout float, but I only have a little bit of area covered. So I'm going to go ahead and get another row done before I start packing everything down. And the same exact thing. I'm just going to get some lines on the ground. Same thing, flat backing. Just knocking the ridges down. And now's when you want to be very careful to make sure that you are setting your tile gaps properly. You want to make sure that everything is even, all your grout lines are even. So before you go tapping it in, double check and make sure, because you might go to take a photo at the end and then notice that you can see your sheets, and we don't want to see our sheets. And like I said earlier in the video, it helps to look back, step back, take a photo of it with your camera when you get a few in, because sometimes the camera will show you what you're not going to see with the naked eye. It might look good by the naked eye, and then you go to take a photo of it and you say, oh no, I can see the sheets. So a little trick of mine has always been, when I get a few rows done, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna take a photo of everything and see if I'm not seeing something with my naked eye that I'm gonna see with the camera. Now these pieces are gonna bring us up to our very first drain cut. So now we're gonna be able to start working our drain and getting it exactly where it needs to be. You see I'm kind of just gliding on the other tile to get it where I want it. It looks like the drain has to go just a hair to the right. So just take your grout float and just continue tapping all these flush. I have a little bit of thin set that came through right here. So what I'll do is I'll get a toothbrush and I will clean that up with a toothbrush, sponge it down, try and keep your grout joints as clean as you can as you're doing this and setting your tile, because you don't want to have to scrape it out. These are a lot more grout joints to clean than it is with just a regular like 12 by 24. I went ahead, sat the rest of the tile, got my drain down right below flush. I don't like it perfectly flush with the tile. I set it just a little bit down. I'll use the back side of my float, very gently tap it down until I get it where I want it. And if you have a couple tile that maybe don't set right, I had a couple in here that dipped a little bit too low. I peeled it back, put a little bit of mud under it, built it up to where I wanted it, because sometimes it happens, you know, and so I had a little bit of thin set come through some grout lines too. Carry a toothbrush, carry some kind of brush that you can get in those joints, clean them out. It's a lot easier while it's wet to clean them out than when it's dried up. So try to get it as clean as you can after you get your first set, and then it'll make your grouting much easier. But if you guys enjoyed the video, like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be sharing the entire shower process of tiling the entire thing start to finish. And I hope you guys learned something in the video. Tried to share some techniques, maybe make your life a little easier, maybe show you something you haven't seen before. So I'll catch you guys on the next one. We'll get the shower wrapped up this week.